Hello and welcome back to the Odds Now YouTube channel for the latest edition of the Premier League betting show. We're back after a little bit of a hiatus for the FA Cup last weekend, and the Premier League action rolls on, doesn't it? Things are getting interesting at both the top and the bottom as we virtually reach what is the halfway point of the season. Still a lot to be decided, I think, but it does. We do have a clear picture of kind of which teams are going to be in the mix for most of the leading honours, I think. Brad is joining me, my usual co-host. I'm Matt Hill. Probably should have started with that, shouldn't I? But Brad Walker joins me. Brad, how are you doing? How's your week been?
All good, mate. Yeah, looking forward to another. I think there's some interesting matches this weekend, aren't there? So I'm looking forward to getting into them straight away.
Yeah, it certainly is. So if you're watching the Premier League betting show for the first time, well, it's very simple and straightforward. What we do is we run through the upcoming 10 matches from the weekend that is upon us, and we'll give a best bet from each. We'll alternate between myself and Brad and run through each match, probably about 2 minutes on each, and leading you to a show in under 30 minutes where you can get a full recap ahead of the weekend action and hopefully a few winning selections too. Well, I'll dive in first with Newcastle at home to Bournemouth. That is the lunchtime kickoff on Saturday, and wow, what a time of it Newcastle are having. Continue to be the league's form side, arguably the country's form side. They really have got themselves in the groove, and away from this fantastic league form as well, of course, got themselves in a very handy position in the League Cup semi-final, winning 2-0 at the end. And they will defend that 2-0 lead at the start of February. Very exciting times for Magpies fans who will be dreaming of a first trophy in many, many years. But in terms of the league, as I say, in fantastic form, really strong chance of Champions League football now. I think 6 straight wins has pivoted them up that table into fourth. They are only 3 points behind Nottingham Forest, 5 points behind Arsenal in second. I was wondering to myself the other day, are they in the title picture potentially? I think if they won another 6 in a row, they might be, but probably still a bit of work to do at the moment. But fantastic times for the Magpies and for Eddie Howe. They take on Bournemouth here. Bournemouth having a fantastic season themselves and got a really good win quite recently over Everton, and a good 2-2 draw at Chelsea. So they don't come in bad form either. But I do have my worries about their injury problems at the moment. They're really racking up for the Cherries at the moment. They've got 10 first-team players missing as we speak, heading into Saturday, particularly in forward areas. They're looking like obviously lost Enis Unal as well to go with Evan Nielsen, which was a massive blow. I do wonder whether they'll dip into the transfer market for a forward this January, because they've got themselves in a really strong position. As I say, good unbeaten run going at the moment. But you do feel like that bench looks particularly like my team. Carlisle had 2 young players on loan from Bournemouth who were both recalled, found themselves on the bench against Chelsea. No disrespect to the young lads in question, but that kind of shows where Bournemouth are at in terms of a threadbare squad at the moment. And I think going away to Newcastle, a tough trip at the best times, never mind when they're in this kind of run. So I'm going to keep this quite simple. I do fancy Newcastle quite strongly in this game. The way I'm going to play it, I'm going to have 2 bets in this game. My main bet is Newcastle to lead at both half-time and full-time. That is a very generous 8-5, and that has landed in 7 of the last 9 Newcastle games. In fact, the only game in this winning streak it hasn't landed in was when they played Bromley in the FA Cup, where Bromley took a shock lead and managed to hold them to 1-1 at half-time before going down 3-1. But in the league, this is just pretty much a given for Newcastle at the moment. They start games very, very quickly. They close them out with a degree of comfort. And I think the 8-5 on offer about Newcastle winning at half-time and full-time looks a fantastic value bet. I am also going to have a sneaky point on Newcastle to be leading after 10 minutes at 5-1. In 5 of their last 9 games, they have scored inside the first 10 minutes, Newcastle. Some rapid starts. Isak and Anthony Gordon both been scoring virtually after kickoff on a couple of occasions recently, and they just seem to be flying out of the traps. Confidence is high. I would not be surprised to see similar occur here. So that's 5-1 for Newcastle to be leading after 10 minutes if you fancy something a little bit more ambitious. But the main selection is Newcastle half-time, Newcastle full-time at 8-5. Brad, over to you for West Ham, who take on Crystal Palace in the first of our 3 o'clocks.
Yeah, West Ham, of course, now have Graham Potter in the dugout after Julian Lopetegui's departure, which I think we all saw coming. Perhaps he stayed even few weeks longer than we expected, really. And he did get off to a winning start in his first Premier League match versus Fulham midweek. It must be said that West Ham benefited from multiple Fulham mishaps at the back, I think, to secure that 3-2 win. Several major blunders, in fact, led to those West Ham goals, but I'm sure they'll certainly take that following a 3-match losing run in all competitions prior to that game. Can it be the start of a positive run for, I think, what's fair to say, an underachieving, West Ham side when you look at the calibre of players in their ranks? I think they're certainly better than 12th in the table, which is where they currently sit. And moving on to Crystal Palace, they've certainly improved as well after a poor start to the season. Oliver Glasner's side are now unbeaten in 5 matches in all competitions. 3 of those ended in victory as well, including a 2-0 win at struggling Leicester on Wednesday. Key players have certainly stepped up for Palace in recent weeks. You've seen goals from the likes of Jean-Philippe Mateta, Eberechi Eze and Mark Guéhi, who are all pillars of that Palace squad. I think it's fair to say they're still below West Ham coming into this one in 14th, 2 points behind the Hammers, but of course they can overtake them with a win. I think it speaks to the poor start Palace made, that they are still in 14th after enjoying a good run, but they're certainly up and running now. In terms of the odds on the winners line, they're quite evenly spread. West Ham have been solid at home lately. They've only lost 2 of their last 8 at the London Stadium, and they came versus Arsenal and Liverpool, who of course occupy the top 2 spots in the Premier League. But I do think that Fulham win was incredibly deceiving, and West Ham's goals were gifted to them thanks to some mistakes at the back from Fulham, and the result certainly doesn't tell the full story of the match. Despite scoring 3 goals, West Ham averaged just 0.94 expected goals across 90 minutes, which I think is some statement. Meanwhile, Fulham averaged a whopping 2.84, and we're actually the better side for large portions of that match. So I don't think you can take too much from what was still an impressive win over a good side in Fulham. But Palace themselves head to the London Stadium in a bit of a good moment themselves, as I touched upon. They've only lost 1 of their last 8 away matches. That came at Arsenal as well. And they also have a good record versus West Ham in recent years. I think they've only lost 1 of the last 5 meetings with the Hammers, which came in August, actually, in the reverse fixture where West Ham won 2-0 at Selhurst Park. But West Ham have also failed to beat Palace in the last 5 home matches against the Eagles. So putting all that together, I'm going to keep it simple as well, Matt. And I think I'm going to back the Crystal Palace win, which comes in at a quite wide 17-10 with multiple sports books at the time of recording. I think there's plenty of value there to back an away win in this one for a West Ham side who, like I said, picked up a positive result last time out, but maybe wasn't as the result didn't tell the full story.
Hey, 17-10 about Crystal Palace. Yeah, it's a bit of a pick 'em that game, but Brad makes a good case for the away win. I think very early in the Graham Potter reign for West Ham. So work to be done, I think it's fair to say. Well, Brentford take on league leaders Liverpool in the next 3 p.m. kickoff. And Brentford have previously been pretty much impenetrable at home, but that home record has just started to wobble, hasn't it, in recent weeks? Last 3 home fixtures, they had a 2-0 loss to high-flying Nottingham Forest, a 3-1 loss to high-flying Arsenal, and a good comeback draw against Man City, although it should be said that Man City are obviously in a very vulnerable spot compared to their usual selves. So maybe not as impressive as a result as it normally would be against City, I think it's fair to say. So, yeah, just a little bit of a wobble, but they are playing the creme de la creme there, aren't they? And this is a tough run of home games for the Bees. As I say, taking on Forest, Arsenal and City, now taking on Liverpool, and then they have Tottenham after that. Villa and Chelsea still to come in recent weeks as well. So maybe, just maybe, that home record that we were all waxing lyrical about, they benefited from a kind run of early home fixtures, and maybe it's just going to balance out a little bit over the next few weeks. But they're still a very entertaining side to watch, Brentford. They tend to produce the goods in terms of goals, don't they? That 2-0 loss to Forest was the only time they failed to score at home this season. So they're always good for an attacking threat. They like to play on the counter-attack, which is what you would imagine they will be doing against Liverpool. Liverpool themselves continue to have a fantastic season, held to a little bit of a frustrating 1-1 draw against Nottingham Forest, but they showed good character to bounce back in that match. I thought they weren't at their best for early periods, but in the end, it was a wonderful performance from Matt Sells in the Nottingham Forest goal that kept that game to a 1-1 draw. I think all in all, although he might not say it, Arne Slot would have been fairly pleased with that 1-1 draw. against an informed side and against technically a potential title rival. Best just not to lose there. Arsenal did, of course, take advantage and close the gap a little bit, but you still feel like Liverpool very much in control of their own destiny at the moment. I'm sure they'll fancy their chances here against a Brentford side who, as I say, are leaking goals a little bit at the moment, even at home, where we traditionally would expect them to be stronger. I think Liverpool will have too much for them here, plain and simple. But I do think Brentford, as I say, only failed to score once at home this season. So I think by backing Liverpool to win with both teams to score at 6-4 is a very good way of getting the league leaders on side. Liverpool odds-on favourites to win this game naturally, but you can get 6-4 by adding in the possibility of a Brentford goal, which tends to occur. So that's the way I'll be playing that one. Brad, back to you for Leicester, who are at home to Fulham.
Yeah, we'll start with the hosts, Leicester. Matt Ruvan Nistelrooy's side, I think it's fair to say, are in free fall at the minute with 6 consecutive losses now in the league, cutting themselves further adrift of safety. They are on 14 points at the minute, 2 points behind Wolves in 17th, but they are also about a win in their last 4 matches at home. The last win actually came in Van Nistelrooy's first match in charge, which was a 3-1 win over West Ham in a game where really West Ham were the better side for large portions too. But Leicester, to their credit, were able to dig out the result that night. They haven't been able to do that since. And they face a Fulham side who are enjoying a good run themselves before that West Ham match, what I just spoken about there. They were unbeaten in 9 matches in all competitions prior to the game at the London Stadium. But they've only got themselves to blame for that loss. Like I said, I mentioned the expected goal statistics, but the major blunders at the back. If you just go and watch the highlights there, you can't believe what you're seeing for some of the goals that went in. But I'm sure they'll be quietly confident of returning to winning ways against what is really a very poor Leicester team who do look destined to go down, really. Fulham do come in odds-on favourites to win here. Narrow odds-on favourites at 19-20. And they have won 4 of their last 5 meetings with Leicester, including a 2-1 home win back in August. But I do think I found a way of boosting that price further. Leicester scored in all of their first 8 home matches in the league. They have now failed to score in each of their last 3. But they do face a Fulham side without a clean sheet in 5 matches overall. And they've not picked up a clean sheet in their last 4 away matches either. So while Fulham do rightly come in favourites, given everything we've seen from both of these sides this season, I think the league table paints a pretty clear picture of where they're both at, respectively. But I do think the away win with both teams scoring it just short of 3-1 is a worthy punt. That comes in at 13-5 with multiple bookmakers at the time of recording. But that price is shortening, so it's best to get on it sooner rather than later. But yeah, I'm going to go with a Fulham win with both teams to score at 13-5.
Okay, Brad back in Fulham to bounce back to winning ways in a goal frenzy, which you could quite feasibly see, couldn't you, against this Leicester side, who are good for a goal, but as you say, certainly have their shortcomings and look destined for the drop. Well, Arsenal take on Aston Villa in Saturday's late kickoff, and this is an intriguing affair, isn't it? Because Arsenal, like I say, they were able to take advantage of Liverpool's drop points at Nottingham Forest with a 2-1 win over Tottenham, kind of arresting a recent slump somewhat after crashing out of the FA Cup to Manchester United on penalties. Obviously 2-0 down in that aforementioned League Cup semi-final to Newcastle. A 1-1 draw with Brighton was more frustration before that. So they may feel like they've let Liverpool build a little bit of a league. It was really important that they took advantage against Tottenham, and they did so 2-1. I wasn't entirely convinced by the performance. I thought they really sat back on things, gave Tottenham a chance of nicking a point, which they nearly did. It wasn't a performance that convinced me. Arsenal are back to their sort of fluent, free-flowing best. And I think they've got a really tough examination coming up here against Aston Villa, who are just sort of quietly going about their business. Of course, Villa were the story of last season, getting back into the Champions League, and they're really enjoying themselves back in Europe's Premier competition. But I think quietly, they're having quite a good season in the Premier League as well. There was a lot of talk about Chelsea being title contenders up until 2 or 3 weeks ago. Well, Villa are only 2 points behind Chelsea. They're level on points with Man City in 7th place. So it would not take many more wins for Villa to get themselves into that top 4 conversation again here. And I've been quite impressed with their recent performances. They grinded it out against Everton, but yes, Everton aren't a fantastic team, but that was Everton at home in the first game since reappointing David Moyes. So that was a more difficult fixture because of the game state than it perhaps looked, and they got the job done there with a clean sheet. Obviously, had too much for Leicester. It wasn't so long ago they had a good win over Manchester City, and their only really bad performance in recent weeks was that 3-0 loss to Newcastle, which, as we say, probably the form team in the country. So do I think Aston Villa can ask questions of this Arsenal side? I definitely do. I'm not convinced with the way they played against Spurs. I think the pressure is looking a lot on this Arsenal squad, and they're looking a little bit threadbare in certain areas with injuries as well. So I think with a team the quality of Villa, to be able to get them 7-4 double chance, it just looks a massive, massive price to me. So that's the way I'm going to play that one. Aston Villa or the draw, 7-4, and that price quite widely available too. So you don't have to scramble around to get it either. That's the way I'll be playing the late kickoff. Well, we move on to the Sunday action then. 4 games here, and we'll start with Nottingham Forest at home to struggling Southampton. Brad.
Yeah, Forest are continuing to fly, aren't they, towards the top of the table. They're now unbeaten in 8 matches following that 1-1 draw with Liverpool in midweek. They're impressive for large spells, I think it's fair to say, particularly in that first half. And they dug in the second half as well when Liverpool increased the pressure to secure a point. You mentioned Matt Sowers' stunning performance. He was incredible, pulling out 2, 3, or maybe even 4 world-class saves to deny the Liverpool forwards. I think they're also brilliant on the attack, aren't they, Forest, with the likes of Morgan Gibbs-White, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Elanga, Chris Wood, a force to be reckoned with for anyone, but they're also backed up by a real solid base at the back with the likes of Milenkovic and Murillo, both putting in great performances at the City Ground a couple of days ago. And it's hard to see how Southampton get anything from this one. I'll just cut to the chase, with Southampton. They're on course to be the worst Premier League team of all time at the moment. They were unfortunate in their 3-1 loss to Man United on Thursday. I think the United goalkeeper, Andre Onana, impressed in goal to deny them on several occasions, and they did lead at Old Trafford until the 82nd minute, only for Amad Diallo to sink them with a late hat-trick up there. But the reality is they need points. The performances aren't too important right now. It's how many points they can get on the board, and they've only picked up 1 point in their last 8 Premier League matches and still only have 1 win to their name all season. I think they've only picked up 2 points in total in away fixtures as well. And they face a Nottingham Forest side who are in the top half of the table in terms of home records. So it's hard to see, again, how Southampton get anything here. I don't think Forest are particularly known for their free scoring efforts this season under Nuno Espirito Santo. They've only averaged 1.43 goals scored in the Premier League. They've only scored 2+ goals at home on 1 occasion, I think it is this season. But they do face a dismal Southampton team who have averaged over 2 goals conceded so far in the league. They've conceded 3 or more goals as well in 48% of their Premier League matches this season, Southampton, so just under half. And then you think of the names I rattled off then in that Nottingham Forest front line. This game could really make for an ugly reading for Southampton fans by the end of it. And so I was surprised to see over 2.5 home goals sit at 9-5 with William Hill at the time of recording. Again, it's probably because Nottingham Forest are known for their pragmatism rather than their free scoring efforts in the final third. They don't often tend to win by wide margins, but I do think this weekend could be an exception to that rule, just given the poor quality in that Southampton back line. So over 2.5 plus Nottingham Forest goals at 9-5 with William Hill is more than fair price, in my opinion.
Yeah, it could be a good week to get with the Forest goals. Like you say, quite a pragmatic side, but Southampton, they certainly know how to leak them, don't they? So Ivan Juric actually described his team as naive little boys after the way they lost to Man United. So, yeah, we shall see how that one pans out. Another 2 p.m. kickoff on Sunday is Everton at home to Tottenham, and a touch on David Moyes' first game against Aston Villa since returning to Goodison Park. A 1-0 loss at home. He'll have been disappointed with that. Dominic Calvert-Lewin did spurn a glorious chance with the last kick of the game to grab them a point, but it wasn't really an inspired performance from Everton. And I think you could argue that replacing Sean Dyche with David Moyes is a little bit like for like. I think that the new Everton ownership group have a little bit of a history with Roma of kind of bringing back old managers that have got a little bit of a connection to the club. Maybe they just like that and getting the fans on side. But I do really like David Moyes. I really rate him, and I think he's an underappreciated coach. So I do think he'll keep this Everton side up. But it could get a little bit hairy because there's a serious lack of quality there for me right across the pitch. I do like Iliman Ndiaye. He always impresses me when I watch them play, and I think he's handled the step up really well back to the Premier League. But yeah, some real problems in forward area. Would not be surprised to see Everton make a couple of moves if PSR allows before the end of January. Meanwhile, Tottenham. The league season goes from bad to worse, really. A 2-1 loss to Arsenal. It wasn't a bad performance, but ultimately it just continues the trend for Spurs, doesn't it? It's been a season to forget in terms of results. They find themselves at 14th in the Premier League, which I don't think anybody would have forecasted before the start of the season. 24 points from 21 games is an abysmal return. They're losing games left, right and centre. And it feels like even if Spurs manage to get to one of these cup finals and win a cup, Postecoglou is still going to find his position under extreme scrutiny, I would think, come the end of the season. I see the Spurs fan base seem to be very divided with whether he should be out or in, or whether these results sort of need more immediate action. If it was up to me, I'd probably stick with him. I feel like there's bigger problems at Tottenham, probably at ownership level, than the manager. And I think he deserves that chance to try and win a trophy, having got them to the semi-final. And obviously, they hold a slender lead over Liverpool as well. So that's feels like a really, really big game for Ange Postecoglou, doesn't it? But in terms of this game, two struggling sides. I don't see a lot of goals in it, which is not something I normally say with Tottenham games. But Everton, they're quite good at keeping things tight. I'm not sure that Tottenham are in a place where they could sort of rip through them. I mean, in the reverse fixture, they absolutely battered them, but I don't think they're in the same headspace right now. And Everton, I don't have any faith in them to, produce enough goals or enough quality to sort of beat Tottenham here. So I looked for angles, and I reluctantly settled on the draw, which is 13-5. I think this is probably just two pretty mediocre sides who may well just play out a little bit of a boring stalemate, if you will. So 13-5 about the draw is the way I'm playing it, but it's probably my least fancied selection of the week. One more 2 p.m. to cover on Sunday, and that is Man United at home to Brighton, Brad.
Yeah, I think United's form has really picked up of late, hasn't it? In recent weeks, at least, with that draw at Anfield to begin with. Then they beat Arsenal in the FA Cup, despite being down to 10 men for large portions of that one. And then, as I touched upon a moment ago, they eventually overcame Southampton with a 3-1 win at Old Trafford on Thursday. I do still think there were some concerns for United in that match. They gave away a fair few amount of chances, particularly in that first half. And they also conceded their 10th goal from a corner this season. But it is I wrote Adam in my notes, Amad Diallo, who steals the headlines, though, with he's been a shining light for them this term with a hat-trick. Of course, he's also scored important goals at the Etihad, and Anfield. And they welcome a Brighton side who finally picked up their first win in 8 Premier League matches with a 2-0 victory at Ipswich. It's not an easy place to go, so certainly a good win for Fabian Hurtzler's side, having failed to win 8 of their matches prior, of course. So those 6 of those matches did end in a draw, so it wasn't the dismal run which it may first appear as. But still, they'd be grateful to return to winning ways ahead of this one. I was looking at the recent record between these two, and Brighton remarkably have won 5 of their last 7 meetings with United in all competitions, including that 2-1 win at the Amex in the reverse fixture earlier this season. I do think this one is a tough one to call. Eyes are certainly on United to see if they can maintain this positive run of form from the last couple of weeks. I think we're all waiting for what seems like an inevitable slip, just because that seems to be the way things have gone at Old Trafford in recent years. Like I said, there was certainly some cause for concern in that Southampton performance, but they did still get over the line, so you've got to give them some credit there. Brighton, they have been impressive on the road. I think they got the 6th best away record in the division, but it is hard to back them against this United side who are in good form right now, even though there are still questions about them. So I'm going to go down the player prop route instead. The man of the moment, as I touched upon there, Amad Diallo, he's been incredible for Man United. He already looks like he's going to be their player of the season. We're, middle of January. He's already scored, as I said, those big goals at the Etihad and Anfield, plus the late hat-trick on Thursday. Yet for a man who bagged 3 goals recently, he comes in at 5-1 to record over 1.5 shots on target. I couldn't believe that. I had to double and triple check it because it's incredible. I couldn't believe that the odds were so wide against a Brighton defence with only 5 clean sheets this term. I don't think I really have to say much else on that. I think it's certainly worth a point. And that comes in with Bet365, 5-1. Amad Diallo over 1.5 shots on target, considering he's been by far their best player this season, certainly in attacking areas. Like I said, against a Brighton defence who have made habits of conceding recently. I think that's certainly worth a punt. So yeah, I'm going to stick with that one for Man United versus Brighton, Matt.
Yeah, Amad Diallo has been a revelation for my fantasy team. I can tell you that much. Absolutely raked the points in last night. But no, he's in fantastic form. And like you say, Brighton, the results have not fallen off a cliff, but just some worrying trends in recent performances, I think, for Fabian Hürzeler. And he'll be wanting to see better from his side. Well, my last game of the weekend is the 4:30 kickoff, which is Ipswich at home to Man City. And the frustration continued for Man City just when they may have thought they were turning the corner, and a 2-0 lead at Brentford. They let it slip once again, finishing up in a 2-2 draw. That would have been 3 straight wins for City if they had held on, but wasn't able to get over the line there. Brentford are a good team at home, and we shouldn't be all that surprised, but I still find myself a little bit surprised when City chuck 2-goal leads, even for all we've seen in recent weeks. It just it doesn't sit quite right, does it, from what we've seen over the last 5 years? But they're definitely a weaker beast than we're ever used to seeing them being under Pep Guardiola. And I think this is the kind of game that, if you're an Ipswich, this is precisely the kind of game you're relishing when you come up to the Premier League, isn't it? The chance to take on one of the big boys at home, maybe when they've been on a little bit of a bad run and your chances are a little bit higher than usual. It's a free shot for Ipswich. Their tails are up. And to be honest, they do have a goal threat, Ipswich, namely in ex-Manchester City striker Liam Delap, who has been fantastic this season, got among the goals, but also his general all-round play has been really good. He looks like a player that could definitely stay in the Premier League, regardless of whether Ipswich managed to do so. I'm sure he'd desperately love to get a goal against his old employers. But I was tempted to play that line, and I've kind of talked myself out of it. I think I've gone with something a little bit safer and more solid here. My fancy here is both teams to score an over 2.5 goals in the match. That comes in just a tiny shade under evens. Man City really struggling to keep clean sheets at the moment, and as much as you would expect them to score against Ipswich, probably score a couple, they're just struggling for shutouts. 6 of their last 7 games have seen both teams score. I do think Ipswich will fancy their chances for all the reasons previously given, and they'll really go after City early. Hard to see that City defence keeping a clean sheet at the moment, but I do ultimately expect City to have too much for them and probably get the win in the end. But both teams scoring over 2.5 goals. It just feels I could have gone with City to win and both teams to score, but it just feels a little bit safer to play it this way, given how untrustworthy Man City have been over the last couple of months. So yeah, BTTS and over 2.5 goals, effectively even money, 19-20, the best price on offer at the moment. Well, we do have a Monday night fixture to round off the weekend. It's Chelsea at home to Wolves. Brad, Chelsea so long have looked like title contenders, but really let some points slip with silly performances in recent weeks.
Yeah, I think even a month ago we were talking about them as potentially candidates to win the league, but now I think they're in a dogfight to secure Champions League football next season. They've not won any of their last 5 in the league against opposition who, being completely honest, most would have backed them to beat. Reece James had to salvage a 2-2 draw against Bournemouth last time out at Stamford Bridge in the final stages to secure a point for them there. So I think it's fair to say the last month has been a bit of a reality check, maybe for everyone at Chelsea and Enzo Maresca, who is still doing a solid job at Stamford Bridge, but yeah, maybe not soaring at the heights that many thought they would be after their return in the opening half of the campaign. They do face a Wolves side who are also facing a bit of a cooling down period after a red-hot start under a new manager. Vitor Pereira took 7 out of 9 points from his first 3 matches in charge, but is now winless in his last 3. They've been comprehensively beaten in the last 2 as well, both being 3-0 losses to the likes of Nottingham Forest and Newcastle. They still occupy, I think they moved up to 17th now, haven't they? Following the Ipswich result against Brighton. I think they're just above Ipswich on goal difference at the time of recording. So as we speak, they are safe, but like I said, they're right on the edge of those relegation places, and they do have a very difficult run coming up. Sorry, and I think another string of negative results could see another change in tone again at Molineux. I do fear for Pereira. I wrote a piece for oddsnow.com early this week where I looked at the major outright markets in the Premier League, and I think I actually tipped Wolves to go down, just because if you look at their upcoming fixtures, it makes a real challenge for them and for Vitor Pereira. And if they do lose a couple of them, I do think that the ball could get rolling again in terms of a negative change of tone at Molineux. I think the atmosphere could take a bit of a dip once again. And once that starts to build, we're at the time of year now, it can be hard to get out of that rut. Don't get me wrong, they could easily go to Stamford Bridge and win on Monday. I haven't said that, given how what we've seen from Chelsea in recent weeks. But yeah, you do feel it's a real crucial period coming up for Wolves. And I'm certainly not willing to back Chelsea at 4-11 when you consider their form. But again, like for what I just said there, Wolves in recent weeks, I'm certainly not convinced by them either. I think they come at 15-2, very wide underdogs. I do think there will be goals though. So I'm going to back the home side to get back to winning ways with over 3.5 scored. I think Wolves have averaged 3.7. Their away fixtures have averaged 3.7 goals, in total in the Premier League this season. They face a Chelsea side who are still bursting with attacking quality in forward areas. If you look at Wolves' defensive record, it's abysmal, which you'd expect Chelsea to take advantage of. But this bet, also came in their last two meetings. I think Chelsea secured a 6-2 win at Molineux back in August, and they also won 4-2 at Stamford Bridge in this fixture last season. So Chelsea to win with over 3.5 goals at 7-5 with Betfair, I think it's a fair price. I was scrambling a little bit to find a bet for this one. It's not the easiest match to bet on when you consider the recent form of both. But yeah, if I had to lay my hat on anything, that's where I'll be going for that one, Matt.
Okay, Chelsea to win and over 3.5 goals at 7-5. That rounds off this week's selections. We will just recap before we make our departures. So starting with yourself, Brad. And if I was going to put you on the spot, I say put you on the spot, but I do this every week, so I'm sure you expect it by now. But if I was going to put you on the spot, what would be your best bet of the weekend here?
I'm surprised that there's Diallo odds at 5-1, so I'll probably lay my hat there. I do like the Palace one though as well. I think they're also very wide, but I would, if I had to pick one, it would be the Diallo bet over 1.5 shots on target at 5-1.
Okay, man of the moment, Amad Diallo to be in amongst the action again for Brad. My favourite selection is probably Newcastle half-time, Newcastle full-time. And normally, regular viewers will know, a big fan of Bournemouth. But I do think injuries are stretching them really, really thin at the moment. And I think Newcastle are just in an unbelievable vein of form, particularly at home. All the signs are pointing to them just, sort of blasting Bournemouth off the park there. That's my gut feeling there. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed this week's Premier League betting show. Let us know what you're backing in the comments. We'd love to hear your feedback. And if you haven't already, please make sure you press subscribe and stick with Odds Now for all the latest sports betting content. We'll be back very soon. See you again. Thanks for watching.